Hello, everyone, and welcome. Today, we're diving into a topic that often sparks intense emotions in modern dating. Specifically, why certain women react explosively when it comes to requesting a DNA test, while others don't. We'll explore what lies beneath these reactions, including social dynamics, personal insecurities, and the clash between modern norms and biological realities. Throughout this presentation, I'll break down why these responses happen, what men need to understand about the psychology behind them, and how this all plays out in today's relationships. So, let's get started and uncover what's really going on behind these flashpoints in modern dating. Let's talk about how the request for a DNA test can create a real clash between two important feelings. On one side, there's the female longing to be seen as pure, loyal, and desirable, especially by the man she chose to be with. When she hears accusations like, "You're cheating," or "You don't trust me," it strikes at her core identity. She might interpret these questions as personal insults, but often they're rooted in biological and emotional realities. In modern dating culture, there's a tendency to romanticize instinct over logic, which makes these requests seem threatening or accusatory. But in truth, when a man asks for a DNA test, he's not making a comment on a woman's character. He's addressing a biological fact. Men can't confirm paternity without some form of verification. This leads us into understanding the emotional weight surrounding fidelity, the norms of relationships, and how female mating strategies and male psychology influence these conversations. The asymmetry here is significant because paternal certainty has never been fully guaranteed in human history. Unlike maternal certainty, which has always been absolute, because a woman always knows the child is hers, paternal certainty has been much more uncertain. This has shaped how men and women perceive trust and fidelity differently. And that's what makes this conversation so uncomfortable. Biology plays a big role, and it's often at odds with our cultural ideals of trust and loyalty. So this slide really highlights how a woman's timeline for conception might not be as clear-cut as she believes. There's often a lot of uncertainty about when things actually happened, her dating patterns, and her past choices. And when a man asks for a DNA test, it's not always about guilt. Sometimes, it's about facing uncomfortable truths that she's been avoiding. This kind of confusion or ambiguity about conception timelines is actually more common than many people want to admit. Some women might feel they're not official until the man explicitly commits, or they might prefer to keep their options open, meaning they entertain multiple men at once. Women themselves often admit to being selective with honesty, delaying commitment, and blurring boundaries. You see overlapping talking stages and casual relationships becoming more the norm. Today's dating environment isn't the same stable, predictable world it used to be. Cultural shifts now encourage more fluidity, which can lead to increased paternal uncertainty. All of these factors contribute to a landscape where clarity about paternity and commitment can be much harder to establish. So, what we're really seeing here is that this fear of losing one's identity often triggers panic rather than logical thinking. When a woman feels accused or suspecting infidelity, she might think, "He thinks I'm like the women who cheat," or "He doesn't see me as wife material anymore," or even, "He sees me differently now." These thoughts come from a deep fear of being judged or labeled in a way that threatens her self-image. And even if she has nothing to hide, the fear persists because, for many women, social status, especially their perceived purity or desirability, is still closely linked to how they view themselves as a long-term partner. That's why phrases like, "You're not the exception," or "Your word isn't enough," or "You're not above suspicion," resonate so strongly. When a man asks for a DNA test, it's often not just about the facts. For many women, it's about preserving or protecting their social reputation. And that's a crucial point, because for many women, the emotional reaction to suspicion is deeply rooted in concerns over social status, not just the relationship itself. So, understanding this helps us see that, at the core, much of this panic is about maintaining a sense of worth and standing within their social circle. When we look at the request itself, it often touches wounds that aren't really about the man. Instead, It's about their internal chaos. These wounds can include relationship insecurity, a history of blurred sexual boundaries, or an intense need to protect a certain image they've built. There's often shame tied to past decisions and a deep fear of being exposed or judged. Women who panic or escalate in these situations tend to share some common patterns. They might say, "If it gives you peace of mind, no problem." But underneath, there's usually a lot of anxiety and insecurity. On the other hand, women who have a secure, honest, and stable relationship with themselves tend to respond very differently. They don't feel the need to escalate or panic because they're more grounded in their sense of worth and clarity. Now, an important point to highlight is that the women who panic the most are often the ones who struggle with accountability. They might have difficulty owning their part or being honest about their feelings and boundaries. So, understanding these patterns helps us see that these reactions are less about the situation and more about the internal struggles each person is dealing with. It's a crucial piece in understanding how to foster healthier, more honest connections. When a reaction becomes explosive, irrational, or aggressive, it often reveals more than any test ever could. For example, threats like, "If you don't trust me, we're done," are a way to intimidate or control the situation. Projection shows up when someone says, "Only insecure men ask for DNA tests," implying that the request is a sign of their own insecurity, not the other person. Guilt tripping might sound like, "You clearly don't love me," trying to make you feel guilty to get what they want. And shamming appears in statements like, "How dare you ask that?" which is aimed at making you feel ashamed for questioning or requesting clarity. What you'll often see in these moments, especially with women, is that a strong sign of guilt or insecurity is when they respond with emotional attacks instead of giving clear, rational explanations. It's a way for them to deflect and avoid facing the real issue. Now, it's important to understand that emotional manipulation usually follows moments of panic. When someone feels threatened or out of control, they might resort to these tactics to regain power or control over the situation. Recognizing these patterns can help you stay grounded and avoid being pulled into their emotional reactions. No panic, no theatrics, just mutual respect. Let's remember, when approaching sensitive topics like DNA testing, it's important to stay calm and grounded. There's no need for drama or emotional reactions. Instead, focus on maintaining mutual respect and understanding. Now, I often hear women say, "Of course, let's make sure we start this journey with total certainty." That's a great mindset. It shows a commitment to honesty and clarity from the beginning. A woman who values transparency understands that trust isn't built on blind faith. It's built on seeing the truth clearly. And when emotionally grounded, confident women tend to respond differently to requests like DNA testing. They view it as a way to strengthen trust, not as a personal attack. They see it as a logical step in building a solid foundation. Or sometimes, as a man protecting himself, which is perfectly valid. Now, moving to the key point here, high-value women don't fear DNA tests. In fact, they welcome clarity. They understand that clear answers lead to stronger relationships. They see it as a way to remove doubt and create genuine trust. And that's exactly what this presentation is all about, creating relationships based on honesty, respect, and clarity. If a man feels the need to fear asking a question, that's often a sign that the relationship is already off balance. It might be dishonest or emotionally unstable. But healthy men, when they have questions, ask calmly. And healthy women, in turn, respond calmly. It's about creating a space of trust and honesty. A DNA test, in this context, is not about accusing someone. It's about safeguarding, ensuring clarity, and building confidence. Many women come with complex dating histories, which can include situations like cheating, which has unfortunately become normalized in our culture. Paternity fraud also exists more often than we'd like to admit. In a dating culture where these issues are prevalent, it's crucial for men to understand why asking questions, like a DNA test, is not something to fear. It's about protecting yourself, fostering honesty, and maintaining a healthy relationship foundation. So, why do we focus so much on emotional responses? Because often, that's where the real story lies. Men, in particular, need to learn to read these reactions, not just rely on words. Words can be manipulated or spoken carefully, but emotions, they tend to reveal the truth beneath the surface. For example, a woman might hope a certain history stays hidden, but her emotional responses, her hesitation, her anxiety, can tell us otherwise. It's about understanding the underlying feelings like fragility of self-image, unresolved guilt, or a deep fear of exposure. These emotions often point to unresolved issues that words might conceal. And here's the key idea. When a woman panics at the idea of a DNA test, that panic itself becomes an answer. That intense emotional reaction, whether it's fear, anxiety, or even anger, can reveal what she's truly feeling or hiding. This is what I call the core truth. Panic reveals reality. It exposes what's really going on beneath the surface, often more than words ever could. So, in our overall journey, understanding these emotional cues is crucial. They help us see the unspoken truths that shape the story far more clearly than language alone. And in modern relationships, truth is the only foundation that still works. It's really the cornerstone that holds everything together. When we talk about truth here, we're emphasizing honesty over assumptions, because assumptions can often lead us astray or create unnecessary doubts. Now, I want to clarify that a DNA test isn't an attack on womanhood or an indication of misogyny. It's simply a way to establish clarity and trust. It's about trusting each other enough to seek the truth, not distrusting by default. In today's world, where dating can sometimes feel unpredictable and commitment seems to be more elusive, certainty becomes more important than ever. It's not about being offensive or harsh. It's about creating a solid foundation for genuine connection. When timelines blur and ambiguity becomes common, honesty and certainty are what keep relationships healthy and real. So my final thought is this. Modern love, with all its complexities, requires modern honesty. That's the key to navigating these new dynamics successfully.